Hello everybody, and today I'm going to do a Photoshop and a Lightroom, not tutorial, but how I edited some long exposure photography at a couple of locations. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I've been asked to, if you could put a video out there and show how I edited these images. It's some fine art, long exposure, whatever you want to call it, photography. I love it. I love doing it. I don't do it enough, and I don't get to locations where it suits this type of processing. And what we're going to do is create some of this. Now these are some of the prints that I've printed off for customers. So I visited two locations over the last 2 weeks. One was Pin Mill. This one's Osea Beach Huts there. And the other one was, which you've seen at the beginning, was Pin Mill Boatyard. Now then, let's just get that last one out for you. So that was a pano. I think this next one was probably my favourite, which I've just shown you. Certainly one of my favourites, and actually one of the easiest ones to edit as well, so which is great. The videos have actually been out, so this will be after the two videos are out. So I'm going to go over with you how I edited them from start to finish, and like I say, this is just how I do it. I'm sure, pretty positive, that there's easier ways, better ways, but it's just how I do it because it's what I'm used to doing in Lightroom and Photoshop. So let's get into it and see how we get on. So we'll choose that favourite image that I've just shown you, this one here, and we'll start from scratch and we'll edit something similar to that. So the first thing I would do, and it's the first mistake I made on one of them, is not click remove chromatic aberration, because I forgot. And what does amaze me is, because I shoot Sony, a mirrorless Sony, the amount of detail that I can pull. I was extremely worried about some of these images being blown out. So I did bracket the shots. I manually bracketed the shot. This is a 30-second exposure. That's a 10-second exposure. And I did do a minute exposures as well. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose a different image completely. So let's do that. Let's choose a different image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to process this image here. Now what I've done with this is put the horizon on the top third, so we've got a lot of negative foreground. What I do like about this image, and I haven't touched this besides a quick Lightroom edit. So what I do like about this is the little bit of detail in the cloud. So if I drop down the highlights, you can see that little bit of detail. Now you might not want that detail. I like to see a little bit of detail because it shows that cloud and that water, even though it's nice and flat, there was just a little bit of detail. So I think that's actually a slightly better image, this one here. So we'll just have I actually prefer this one. So I'm going to work on this one. So that's the highlights right up and the shadows right down. Let's just drop the shadows down a little bit and we'll just bring the highlights back in slightly. That's all I will do at the moment till I've sent it into Photoshop, done what I'm going to do, and then I'll bring it back into Lightroom just to finish off. So what we'll do is chromatic aberration. We'll switch all that on. Nearly forgot. Okay. So right click on the image, edit in Photoshop. Okay, the first thing I will do is I will make 2 copies. So if I mess up, I can just revert to that copy. And throughout the process, I'll be making copy after copy. So all I do is drag it down to this box with a plus in, and it makes a copy. Then I'm going to do it again. Then I'm going to switch the 2 bottom layers off because I'm not going to use them. They're just something to revert back to. And we're going to work on this top layer. Now then, one of the things with Photoshop now, with the new Photoshop is, if we go to select sky, we'll select sky. And it normally does a pretty damn good job. So let's see, that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a layer just for the sky. So if I go up into edit, copy, go back down to making a new layer, create a new layer and paste. Now I know it's shortcuts, I don't use shortcuts. I'm so used to using the mouse and just using it the old-fashioned way without shortcuts. Should use shortcuts. But anyway, so I've got the sky. The sky's cut out. Fantastic. Before that, we'll delete that for a moment. We'll delete that. Delete that layer. What I'm going to do first, the mast is the biggest part of the problem. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to make another copy, and I'm going to get rid of it. And the way I'm going to get rid of it is just select over most of it and content aware. So what I did was select round it using the lasso tool, right click, content aware. This is all on a PC, by the way. So all that green is where it can use to select and get rid of the parts that we don't want. Now it's got rid of most of it, which is fine, that's okay. So I'm going to apply that. Apply, we'll have a look. Happy, yeah, semi-happy, that'll do, okay. Deselect. Now, we'll just select the top 2 images and I'm going to merge them down. So right click on those, merge visible. Right, so I've got that image and then I've got the original image again. What I'm going to do now is, let's just zoom in a bit so we can see a little bit of what we're doing. What I'm going to do is just get rid of this mask a little bit more. And all I'm going to use is the spot heal tool. So I'm just going to get rid of some of it to make it even easier for me to use. Right, we'll just get rid of them bits. You'll see why I'm doing this in a moment, because I've learnt this on some of the other images that I edited. So I've got rid of the mask, that is great. What I'm going to do now is select the sky on this image that I've got rid of the mask. So select sky. Now obviously the old-fashioned way, you'd have to draw around it, but it's selected it for me. So I will copy, make a new layer and paste. Got it. I don't now need this other layer, don't need that layer because I'm using this layer. So what I'm going to do is, we'll just turn that off. Actually, we'll keep it on. That's actually the bottom layer, look, with the mask on, with the sky now imposed over the top. Now I'm going to, with the sky layer, I'm going to go to transform or free transformation, and I'm going to drag it down. Now this is the way I get rid of the horizon. This is what I'm doing it for. So I've dragged that down, select that there. I'm quite happy at that, how far I've dragged it down. I could do it again afterwards if I need to. Then all I'm going to do is add a layer mask. We'll select the brush tool, and we've got it at the moment, we've got it, its opacity is 100 at 50% low. Let's drop that down to about, no, let's keep it at 100 for now, and then we can adjust. So all I'm going to do now is start finding where this boat is, or boats are, right? And then we're going to fine tune it in a minute. So this is literally just finding where everything is. Okay, everything I want in this image. And then we'll just put that back in a little bit there. We'll be cutting it out properly in a moment. But I found this quite an easy way to do it. So the mast itself looks pretty damn good to be cut out. All we need to do now is just that little bit of work on the round the boat area. And the good thing about doing it this way is you can, if you go over, you can repair by just changing to black and white. Black reveals, white conceals. We'll just change it back to white. We'll get rid of that bit there a little bit. So we can already see things are developing. The next thing I'm going to do is actually forget the sky moment, and I'm just going to get rid of these, the bits of the old boat that have just sticking out the water, some of the ruined boats. And the easiest way to do that is select the foreground, spot heal tool, and let Photoshop do its job. And because they're quite contrasting compared to what they've in the water, that will get rid of that quite easy. Now the other thing I'm going to do is try and get rid of the horizon. So it's a double whammy. This is just with a spot heal tool, because if I do this way, when I do put that sky in, it'll just blend better. Okay, so I'm not going really any detail at the moment. Okay, we'll put that sky back in. And now I'm just going to see, I just want to see how this is going to blend in here. So I'm just going to try and get it blending a little bit better. So we'll go back onto the layer mask, make a right big brush. Actually, what we need to do is, undo that because I've just spot healed it. Okay, so we pick on the brush, and we'll go to about 30% opacity, and because we're doing that, it'll now blend in so much better. So we're blending in that foreground and that background so much better. It looks so much more natural. Okay, so let's zoom in on the image. Let's get into some of the detail. So I'm going to work on this bit here. Select the brush again. Just change the size of the brush. Select the layer mask. And then we'll just paint that in now. Because it's at 30%, it's still sort of seeing through. So we're going to put it back up to 100% for a moment. There we go. And we're going to get rid of this. Not worried about that little thing sticking out the boat there because I don't want it in anyway. So we'll zoom right in, and we'll start getting rid of that detail a bit more. Just make sure that's completely done. Okay, so we'll select the white. A good tip for these straight edges is, if you go right up to the straight edge, click where you want to start. One thing we've got to do is change the brush, because as brush has got a soft edge to it at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just choose a brush, and I'm just going to, a nice hard edged brush, and the reason for that is because we're going to cut around the edges. So we click on where we're going to start. I hold down the shift button, and this is obviously in a straight line, and then click and it'll just create them straight lines. So I'm okay there. There's a straight line-ish there. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of that bit. We'll sort this bit out in a minute, that's not a problem. We're just going to draw over that little whatever it is that was sticking out there. And the good thing is, if we make a mistake, we can just change the colour back to black and we can put it back in. So you're in total control of what you're doing. And we can do that all the way through the process. So that's that part of the boat cut out. This is the more detailed part, so I'm going to come to here, click, go as far down as I can along the edge, hold the shift key, and then if I go back up to there, hold the shift key and then click, it'll draw round that nice straight and then I can just fill it in. Okay, so this is a little bit more difficult because we want a smaller brush, but I'll start there, I'll go down as far as I can, which is somewhere there, click, and then I'll go back up to there, click again, and that'll fill that in. We'll make a smaller brush, do the same again, click there, go as far down as I can, hold the shift, back up to there, and we've cut that out. And then all we need to do is just finely tune. I mean, we can zoom in, but I think I can manage doing that. And if we just do little parts and then click, if we do make a mistake, we can just redo that one a little bit. So that's that cut out. I've got to sort this out because it's with at 100%, so I've got to sort that bit out there, but I'll do that in a minute. Just do that freehand. Like I say, get rid of this mark here because of the brush type we used, and we'll just make it big. We'll just get rid of that, like so. Now this bit here has not been sort of got rid of correctly, so what we're going to do there, we'll drop the brush down to that, we'll click where we're going to start, hold the shift key, we'll do the same with that one, we'll click where we're going to start, then press the shift key, then press where we're going to end, and that's cleaned that up nicely. So we're getting there. Now let's just zoom out and see how it looks already, because the transformation will be quite amazing. So we've already getting there. We've got to work with these details here and here, but the process is exactly the same. This is how I do it. This is how I do my process. And while I've got that brush on, I'm just going to make that a little bit more natural to the eye. So I'm just going to get rid of that bits. Okay, we can sort that out, sort these out, like I say, in a minute. But the main thing is to get that cut out. We'll just zoom out a bit more, just to show you. But we can already see the image is actually nearly there. So I'll take your time with it. It'll take me another 20 minutes or so to get this done, and then we'll go on to the next process. But that process of cutting out is how I like to do it. There is different ways to do it. You can try and select the boat and things like that, and then delete everything and then put the boat back in. It just doesn't quite look as natural to me. And it seems to be more work. This seems to work really well for this simple image. So yes, we'll get this cut out, and I'll catch you guys in about 30-second times because I'll speed this up. Okay, so we've pretty much cut that out. All I want to do now is try and blend that sky into the sea a little bit more. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work on that, and that really is just picking the brush, just changing the well, the hardness and the size is fine, not the size, but that's going to work quite well. And if you pick a big brush, it will tend to blend a lot better. So just pick a big brush. Obviously don't go too close to the boats on the big brush. Just go a little bit smaller there. Just that little bit in between is quite critical. But that already looks as if that mist is rolled in, and we've got a nice blend. Now then, I don't think it needs it on this image, but there's another thing you can do. So I'm just going to show you. That image is pretty well done now, but I'm just going to show you another little trick. Create another layer, go down to the bottom, create another layer, and then we're going to pick a brush tool. What I'm after is I'm after something that's going to create a bit of mist. So I'm going to choose a brush tool that sort of emulates mist and fog. So I want something probably like that. So we'll pick its size, and we'll go a little bit mad with this, but we're trying to fill in this. We're trying to make this background, the sky and the water meet, the sea or the lake or whatever it'll be. So I'm just going to go and just not painting black. So we'll undo that. We'll choose white, and when I say white, I mean white, not grey. Okay, so we'll choose some white. Now don't worry about anything yet, because you'll see what I'm doing in a minute. Then what we're going to do is, we've painted that in there, we're going to go to filters, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur that out to however we feel, which is probably where it was actually, somewhere like that. And then we're going to drop the opacity down to, well, that's about 20, we'll go about 20, 22, and that just gives it that little foggy effect. Now we can work on that a little bit more, so I'm just going to zoom in. Just to work on this, we've worked on this outside, but there's sort of gaps here, so if we can just go a little bit more detailed, we can just put some more bits of fog in there, draw it in, just nice, just that nice bit of mist there, just in there a little bit more. That's looking nice. Just going to go back to that layer and just blend that a little bit in, a little bit more. So we'll just remove that. This is the layer we've got without putting that bit of a mist in. So we shall we'll select a better brush than that. I just want to go onto the layer and just try and blend this a little bit more. See, we've got too much of that dark water behind, or I don't like it particularly too much. So big brush, go a bit small there. Now we are going over the boat a bit, so I'm just going to rub that out, but I just want that to blend in a bit better there. That's actually better. Okay, we'll undo that bit. I've gone a little bit too far there. That's it, because we're creating into that, going into that shadow, and then all I'll do is just rub them last couple of bits out, just to fine tune that. Now, so. Okay, and then we could, if we wanted to, we could use that little bit of mist as another way of using the mist rather than do it as opacity. We can actually change to probably to soft light as well. If we up the opacity, which might actually work a little bit better. That's at 100%, so we'll just drop the opacity down slightly. I'm actually quite happy with that. I think that's quite nice. We'll just come out and have another look at the image. That is looking pretty damn good. Yes, I'm happy at that. So we'll go back in. I think I'm happy with that. Now, I'll give you another little tip. One of the other images, the sky was quite blue and the water was quite brown. One way I dealt with it is, I'll show you on this one. We'll pretend the water part of it is brown. This is how I did it. I go into, the first thing I'll do is, I'm happy with that image now, so I'm going to flatten the image. Merge visible. So all the ones that are clicked, merged. I'll just bring that to the bottom. So that's that base image. That's what it was like before. So we've done that to that. So I'll make another copy so I don't ruin it. We'll just use this one top image. We'll go to filters, camera raw filter. You can do this in Lightroom as well. So let me change this to brown to show you what I mean. So it will actually change the top as well, this blue bit, but if there were different colours it wouldn't. And the way to do it is select range and go to colour range. Now if I select the blue, and now show me the blues it's selecting, it hasn't actually selected the sky, the blue in the sky, which is great. But we can refine it anyway because we can drop that down so it only sort of selects that bit. Now if we wanted to get, so it just selected that, we can add another layer mask to it. That's for another day. So let's pretend that was brown. I'll tell you what we'll do, let's make it brown. Okay, let's make it brown. We'll so one of my images was similar to how that was now. So what I've done with the process is, I've done exactly the same process, but up the temperature rather than down. Drop the temperature, and we brought it back into blue. Now, a lot of these images look better black and white, or certainly dropping the saturation down. So if we think that bit of blue there is got too much blue in it, too saturated, let's just drop the saturation down a little bit. That's dropped that area down there. I'm okay with that. Press OK. That's done. Now I think what we'll do is we'll refine it. We'll just finish it off, which is what I like to do. We could do the same in Camera Raw. I like to use Lightroom. So we'll save that. That'll send that over to Lightroom. Okay, so we're back in Lightroom and we're just gonna put our little stamp on it, if you like. So obviously we can just go black and white, and we can edit it as black and white, which I will do in a minute. But first of all, I like to see a little bit of colour in these images. I prefer that little bit of colour. What I do like about this image is that little red boat there that's just sticking up, that little bit of pop of red. But I don't want loads of colour. So I will drop the saturation down a bit. I think it just gives it a little bit more mood to the image. I do also like to vignette images. I do vignette a lot of my images, or just give it a slight vignette. Now, there's a couple of ways I like to do a vignette. I like to do a manual vignette, and what I mean by that is, if I go to select, I'll select a brush. I shall up the exposure slightly. Now we can overdo it. Let's overdo it a little bit because we can drop it down. And then I will literally just paint a vignette in. So I'll just paint that in there. That's actually not too bad. I'll just paint that in there. If obviously we can go down and get a deeper vignette in that bottom, but I don't really want too much of that bottom vignette because it's quite dark as it is. Actually, that's not too bad. Let me just show you where I've basically painted that in there. We'll just bring that in. So we'll drop that down, and there's another way of using that amount of vignette. If we just drop the amount down there, it'll drop it down to nothing, or we can up it to more. So we'll keep it at 100. So that's sort of a little vignette in. As obviously we can also do a, if we select a radial filter, I do use the radial filter quite a bit, and I normally make a big radial filter, select, invert, and then we can put a vignette in that way. I do like to do that. We'll remove that. So there's not a lot else to do. I'm just going to bring the shadows up in the boats here. So yeah, we'll bring the shadows up in the boats a little bit. But then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a shadow back in. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to do a brush, select a brush again, exposure. I'm just going to make it more, the light's coming from this side, so I'm just going to put a bit of a shadow in this bottom here. And again, the light's coming more from that left hand side, so I'm just going to put a bit of shadow. It just gives that a little bit of depth to the boats. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the DAs down slightly, and I'm going to drop the clarity down slightly, just a little bit, not a lot, just to soften the image a little bit. We're pretty much there. Now what I'm going to do, to focus your eye on the boats a little bit more, I'm just going to sharpen the boats a little bit, give it a little bit of texture. So I'm going to up the texture, and I'm just going to paint over the boat and the mast, just to make them boats stand out that a little bit more. The other thing I'm going to do is a little bit of dodge and burn. And how I dodge and burn in Lightroom, there's two things you can do. You can use the exposure, just bring it up, and sometimes I'll just use the black, or I'll use both. I'm going to use both on this. Obviously we've got a shadow round the boat, and I'm just going to emphasise that, so I'm just going to emphasise that a little bit there, and I'm going to emphasise around the bottom of that boat, and we can see the mast coming down here, so I'm going to emphasise that. And that sort of leads your eye into the little boats there. Now I like that. I like the composition. Love it, absolutely love it. Another thing I've got to do, because I shoot mirrorless, they're a nightmare for dust spots. One way to get rid of your dust spots, bang up the DAs and see if there's any dust spots. Can't actually see any. Oh, there's one up here, one there, look, we've got a dust spot there. So I'll just get normally Lightroom will do a pretty good job at getting rid of dust spots. Not too much more. I'd rather use Photoshop for removing things, but just dust spots, it normally does a pretty good job. If I do struggle, I will send it back into Photoshop. So we'll just centralise that DAs again, and I'm just going to drop that down just slightly like I did before. And that image is finished for the colour. Maybe it's a little bit bright on this top here, so what I'm going to do, let's just darken this top down. So I'm going to get a radial filter, bring it quite big, but bring it down to the bottom of the image, somewhere there, and then I'm going to invert it like so, and we are going to just drop down the exposure there, just to balance the top and the bottom out just slightly. I like that. I'm happy with that. I think that is pretty much my core image done. The only thing I would like to do is just make that little bit of red pop. So all I'm going to do is go to saturation, and I'm just going to bring the reds up. And just bring it up a little bit, just to pop that red. That's it, that's that done. So I'll save that, export to previous, and then we'll just work on the black and white. I don't use presets. Never. The only preset I've got is for infrared preset, is like a base for infrared, which I've done myself. Don't use presets. So this is the image for the black and white. I'm going to up the contrast. I want it a little bit more contrasty. We'll just drop them shadows so we can bring it. So we're going to bring the whites up a little bit, and we're going to. And really, what we're actually doing is making it more contrasty. And I think I would probably like this area darker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a luminosity range, and I'm going to click on the sky. It's selected most of the sky. I'm just going to adjust that a little bit, and then I'm just going to up that. Doesn't that look good? Now we can do loads of things. We can, we can just try these things. We can up the blacks if we want. That's actually looking quite good. We can really up the blacks, look, but we've only up in the blacks in that area. That, I think, for me, is my image done. What I think would work as well, I'm going to save that. Save previous, unique. I'm going to crop it. And I think it might work as a one-to-one crop, because it's pretty much where you want it. So yeah, we'll add that crop, and then I'm just going to put a vignette around that. I'm going to do a radial filter. Oh, radial filter. Pretty standard vignette, I think. Pretty much there. And invert up the exposure. Drop the exposure. Make it a little bit moody. We'll get rid of that. Have a lot. Yeah, I like that. I like that. The only thing I'm not sure is whether I needed just a little bit. I feel as if I need just a little bit more of that foreground, so I'm actually going to change the crop to a 4:3. We'll just change that around. Drop that to the top. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, we'll save that. So we've basically got 2 or 3 different images there. What I'll do, I'll go back to colour. I actually really like the colour. Really like the colour. I like it as it is. I think it's proper moody. I'm just going to drop down the saturation a little bit, because we've changed it for a black and white. It's made it a bit more saturated, especially that blue. But I like it. I love it. And I'm going to save that as that. So that's the images saved. We've done. So we'll just compare images from start to finish. So we started off. This was the original, and this is the completed image. And I'm pretty happy with that. That's how I process a fine art photography image. It's pretty much how I've done most of the images over the last couple of vlogs. Some were easier to process than others. Some work, some don't. But I'm happy. I'm happy at that. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you maybe took something away from it. Like I say, I'm no professional in Photoshop as such. I've just been using it for years. I've got my own sort of quirky way of doing it. It does work. It definitely does work. And we could work on that a bit more and refine it all. But what you've got to remember is when you're doing long exposure, do you want that little bit of detail in the water, a little bit in the sky, or do you want it fully blown out? So these are the images we created. We sort of created 4 images. This one was the first one, which I was quite happy with. That was the black and white one, which we then started to tweak and give that bit more depth to the image. We then cropped it, and then we then put the colour back in there. So there's actually 4 images there. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it. Every time I do this, I do learn different techniques. I do try different techniques. Some work, some don't. And it depends on what you're cutting out, the shapes of things and things like that. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.